I've said this before on the station that, the settler colony that is the Zionist entity is not infallible. It may have superior, surveillance technologies, spies, and so on. But what Hamas pulled off on October 7th was nothing short of phenomenal. We cannot dictate to the colonized when to break their shackles. And I think it may not have been worked out at the pace and intended outcome as which they dictated, as which they envisaged they wanted at that moment of time. But October 7th, Tufan al-Aqsa, has been an irreversible moment for the resistance. I think, some argue that it was a strategic blunder. But if October 7th didn't happen, Saudi Arabia would have normalized with the settler colony. That is one. And negotiations have always been fruitless. They've been negotiating till they blew in the face. And I will say this again. Settler colonialism is an inherently violent phenomenon. And the decolonization process, touched by necessity, has to be violent. Okay? Negotiations are not going to liberate Palestinians. It is the force of arms that will eventually liberate Palestinians. So that is my, as a parting shot, that is my position. And that is the position of Fanon. Fanon said that. Settler colonialism is violence. You want to overthrow settler colonialism, you need violence, not endless negotiations with an entity that wants to bring about the destruction.
Okay, Professor, so that's fire with fire. Ashraf, let's bring you into the panel discussion. Let's get your take, and maybe from a broader perspective as well.
Yes, definitely. As activists, as progressive internationalists, we've always subscribed to the principle that the oppressed will choose their method of resistance, be they in apartheid South Africa, the Sahawiris in West Africa, the Palestinians, the Cubans. This principle has always stood the test of time. But we viewing this last few days, and especially the impending ceasefire that's currently being negotiated, that was the reason for the topic, has this been a strategic retreat, given what we call, when we view this conflict and this disastrous situation through the lens of the balance of forces approach and the strategy and tactics approach. And when we look at 7th October, let's look at 6th October. The weeks before the 6th of October, Netanyahu regime and Netanyahu himself was at his weakest. There were lots of protests within Israel throughout the weeks, every week, every Sunday. The masses of Israeli civil society were hurtful with Netanyahu himself on a range of issues, both domestic as well as the settlement with Palestine. And having that in context, in the rearview mirror, and looking at the balance of forces, does give a broader perspective, especially today, at this point in time. Netanyahu now is at his strongest. And I think that dichotomy, being at his weakest at that point in time, and post-October the 7th, he unleashed the genocide from the first day. And the bigger question, of course, is when you analyze balance of forces, one would have understood that this would be the result of the kind of action that was taken. It was a remarkable mode of resistance, and the Palestinians in Gaza had every right to engage in that, given the decades of struggle and the current context. But answering the question through the lens of balance of forces and strategies and tactics, I think that creates very interesting analysis in the weeks and years ahead. You must remember that in terms of the response, we all knew, progressives knew, that the vast majority of the Western world would immediately back Israel, and they did. The Biden administration has proven to be the most pro-Zionist regime in history, in recent history, and all the military, technological, economic, and diplomatic support that Israel and Netanyahu has mustered was foreseen with such a conflict. So it's an interesting dimension and analysis. And at this point in time, not only is the Palestinians' situation at its most dire, but the war in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon, and the collapse of Syria, all of that has factored into the calculation. The West has said, look, it's not just an opportunity to crush the Palestinian resistance, but an opportunity to reshape the entire Middle East in the Western image. And this is the outcome we faced today.
Professor, that's certainly a very interesting dynamic, given the fact that the occupation forces have not beaten, so to speak, the resistance in Gaza, in the occupied West Bank. They also continue to struggle against Hezbollah as the resistance movement in Lebanon. But over a year after the genocide in Gaza, they've expanded their war machine. They've displaced millions in Lebanon, killed thousands. And with the fall of the Assad regime, that buffer zone between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Zionist entity, it does look rather fragile and frail now. Do you think there could be a case for the Zionist entity now, clearly knowing we've got momentum and we've got wind in our sails now, Professor?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and you took the words out of my mouth. Israel's tail is up at the moment. Hezbollah is wounded, Iran is wounded, Hamas ostensibly looks wounded. Yemen, we are not so sure at the moment what is. So from that perspective, one can argue that strategically it may be a mistake, but I will counter that to say that one cannot wait for the perfect strategy. One cannot wait for the perfect blueprint, and one cannot envisage a resistance movement doesn't have the tools to envisage the outcomes, the potential outcomes. In fact, I would say that Hamas miscalculated to think that Netanyahu would care about the hostages. I mean, care about his own people. The majority of those that died, that were murdered on October 7th, were murdered and assassinated by Israel itself. I mean, Haaretz has reported on that. I think the New York Times as well has reported about that. And it was not Hamas fighters that killed the majority of those that were taken hostage. Only 250 that made it back into Gaza, but many more were taken by Hamas. So I think that was miscalculation in some respect by Hamas to think that Netanyahu would actually give two hoots about its very own people. So we can talk about the issues that on the face of it, certain groups seem to be wounded and so on, but they are not defeated. And we see this negotiations which Ashraf just spoke about now. But I would say to those negotiations, Israel has no reason to negotiate. Its tail is up. As Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran are wounded, they have an incoming Trump administration who said he'll give Israel all the tools to finish the job. So Israel does not have any motivation in order to go into negotiations. Yet it is going into negotiations. Why? And apparently a deal is very close by, maybe a few days or so on, but we've heard this before. So, if it really was a strategic blunder, as some would point out, then why is Israel getting into negotiations? It has no reason to go into negotiations. So we need to look at this holistically, I think, in order to make, and a strategic blunder from whose perspective?
All right,
from the perspective of the Israel or from the resistance?
Okay, so we in conversation with two thinkers from South Africa, geopolitical analyst Mr. Ashraf Patel, Professor Ahmed Jazba. We're going to quickly just visit the markets. We come back. Ashraf, we're going to pick up with you. Stay tuned.
At the Voice of the Cape, we believe in providing a platform for diverse perspectives and opinions. We encourage open dialogue and the free exchange of ideas. We value inclusivity and respect for all viewpoints. We strive to foster understanding and promote constructive conversations within our community. However, The views expressed on any of the Voice of the Cape's live programming, pre-packaged content, outside broadcasts, simulcasted programs or podcasts do not necessarily reflect the views of the Voice of the Cape, its management or staff. For any concerns or inquiries, please reach out to our team directly.
It's that time of the year again when we all take to the road. Sunral has worked tirelessly to make your journey smoother with our safely engineered roads. If you're traveling during this festive season, please respect your fellow road users, obey the speed limits, maintain a safe following distance, drive carefully through construction zones, and obey all the traffic signage. One moment of patience behind the wheel can make all the difference in getting you safely to your destination. So let's make this festive season one to remember. Sunral, an agency of the Department of Transport.
At Melomed, it's more than just a life, just a patient, just a condition that's reduced to the fine print. It's your life, where every second is of infinite value and requires the highest level of quality private healthcare. Melomed houses some of South Africa's top specialists, including our renowned cardiac and stroke centers of excellence. So when you require private hospital care in Cape Town, choose Melomed, quality and affordable healthcare.
You know what that is, Kamu? It's your poor creepy trying to escape from that pond you call a pool. Listen to the poor thing. Hi, shame. Gasping for air. Nagamu. Don't push it back under. Today is Get the Pool Blue Day. Today is Do Day. So don't suck, Kamu. Get to Builders. Get it done.
Aisha Karim Attorneys, specializing in divorce law, child maintenance, relocation applications, administration of deceased estates, drafting of wills, property transfers, and conveyancing. Contact us on 021 035 1444 or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Aisha Karim Attorneys, your trusted family law specialist.
PM Drive, where minds collide. Participate in deep, thought-provoking, and cutting-edge discussions. This is PM Drive.
In conversation with Mr. Ashraf Patel, Professor Ahmed Jazbai, both geopolitical analysts. Ashraf, from your perspective, do we still look at this narrative now, strategic blunder, or the occupation forces are on the ascendancy and it has hamstrung the resistance, the entire axis of resistance?
Yes, this is a statement that occupies international relations scholars, especially in the last week. But let me start by saying that in this conflict, let us look at solidarity as a theme. And we must be quite clear, and all of us are on the same wavelength here,
Yes.
is those nations or groups such as Lebanon, Hezbollah, Iran, Syria, the Houthis, they have been on the side of solidarity, and they have, in all the very best spirit of solidarity and brotherhood, done their very best in the most trying of circumstances.
Yeah.
And that is a matter of historical record now, as well as nations of the global south, as well as the civil societies of the world. South Africa, its diplomatic power, Colombia in fighting and stopping coal exports, etc. Many of the nations of the global south have rallied behind the Palestinian struggle and continue to do so. So that is, we all agree, a very positive move, and it has exposed the Western liberal order, and particularly the US and Europe have been exposed vis-a-vis the Ukraine conflict and all the other conflicts that they're going to tackle in the future. So this has been the reality outcome from this conflict. And we are emboldened as activists from the global south on this. But coming to a post conflict or post-ceasefire. There's a talk of a ceasefire that Brother Ahmed talked about. And what seems to be happening is both parties are coming to the table. Now that suggests that both are exhausted, i.e., but the power brokers behind Israel in particular want a settlement before the new year. And there's a huge push by all the Western administrations, as well as the pro-Western puppet regimes, particularly Egypt, Saudi Arabia and Turkey, not NATO, wants a settlement sooner than later. And all of these forces are moving towards a settlement. In fact, the news is saying the Hamas leadership also wants to go around the table. All the parties are now exhausted, and the genocide continues, the bombings continues, the loss of life continues, but the reality is a very sobering reality, and that is a post-conflict Palestine or Yemen or Afghanistan, but a post-conflict Palestine, the rules, the narrative, the institution, the funding, the financing is going to be underwritten by these regimes, particularly the West and especially the Gulf states. And this, I mean, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, and to a lesser extent, Qatar, will all reshape this new whatever institutional framework. It will be not a mini Bantustan, but a micro Bantustan. That means there'll be no sovereignty, no leverage, particularly in Gaza. And it does seem, and reading a lot of the analysis, that the new state would have to work through, and they're only going to work through the PA, the Palestinian Authority. And therefore, Hamas, in this scenario already that's taking place, is going to be reduced to a bare minimum. So this is the reality. I mean, I'm merely giving you what the objective reality on the ground is at this point in time. So it's a very sobering reality. And apparently Israel is pushing for the bare minimum, which is they have to recognize the Abrahamic Accords, which most of the Arab states have done so anyway. So this is the objective reality of the situation. It's very painful. And this is something that analysts, activists, global South leaders, networks are looking at and saying, never mind the two-state solution, will any viable entity or life, normal life, ever be possible for Palestinians? And that is the sad situation we face today.
I think, Professor Ahmed, as we conclude, we've got a minute, 30 seconds. Professor Ahmed, where do we go from here? Do we leave the instructions manual for a post-genocide in the hands of the Palestinian Authority? We saw what Mahmoud Abbas and company have been doing in Jenin for the last couple of days now, which is absolutely deplorable.
Yeah, I think, right of Hamas and the resistance at your peril. I think that is would be my parting shot. And, the Bantustan Authority, as I like to call them, has no more legitimacy than, any Bantustan leadership in this country during apartheid. So we treat the Bantustan Authority with the disdain that it deserves. And I would say that, Hamas and the resistance chose to die on their feet as opposed to being subservient on their knees. And that would hold them into good stead. As I said, whatever is left of Gaza, whatever is left of Palestine, post this genocide, is not the end of it. It is merely the beginning, and Israel knows what the resistance is capable of, and as Osama Hamdan, when I met him in Turkey a few months ago, said they will fight until the last man, no matter how this turns out. In a few weeks, months at hand, they will fight to the last man, because what they're doing is their birthright. It is the project of the Ummah. It is not a nationalistic project, and they will fight even if Hamas is eliminated, even the resistance is eliminated, there will be more that come after them.
Ashraf Patel, Professor Ahmed Jazbay, Jazakallah, thanks so much to both of you joining us. Panel discussion, PM Drive 91.3 FM. Appreciate it.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum.
At the Voice of the Cape, we believe in providing a platform for diverse perspectives and opinions. We encourage open dialogue and the free exchange of ideas.